Actors, we've all got issues, so let's talk about them. I'm Juan Ayala, and welcome to Actors with Issues. Each week, we bring you interviews with actors from across TV, film, and Broadway, taking many deep dives into their careers and getting into the successes, the struggles, and of course, the issues that they face as actors. That's enough about us. Let's dive into the episode. Today's guest is a two-time Emmy-winning writer. He's a singer, actor, and dancer. You've seen him on Broadway, in Frozen, Rocky, Peter and the Starcatcher, and currently starring in Some Like It Hot. Please welcome to the stage, Kevin Del Aguila. Kevin, thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Juan. It's great to be here.
So when did little Kevin know that he wanted to become an actor? When did all of that start for you?
Little Kevin knew it pretty early. I remember, I remember being at like a summer camp when I was maybe in first grade, something like that. And you know, they had like a talent show, and I remember coming up with this idea that I was going to write this whole parody of Star Wars called Stupid Wars, and I was going to write it. I was going to act in it. I was going to cast my friends. I was going to direct it, and I did. I put this whole thing together and like, put this thing up, and it went over very well. And I think from then on, I was like, okay, that's what I want to do.
And I'm sure the answer is yes, but throughout one's career, there are always like peaks and valleys. There are times you're really busy, times that there's nothing going on. Was there ever a moment that you were like this close to quitting and then you booked something that was like,
You've just
uh,
described my entire career. That's basically the trajectory of it all. Yes, I mean, I came to New York to be an actor, and but I would write as well. I continued to write while I was in school, little one act plays, little scenes, this, that, and the other. And um, my unemployed actor friends and I, we'd sit around and they'd say, "Hey, let's put up some of the stuff that you wrote. We've got nothing better to do." So we did, and consequently, I kind of had these two careers going. My writing career sort of took off, and my acting career would continue. And at a certain point, I remember being on stage in a show, a regional show, I think in Seattle actually, and thinking to myself, "I'm not enjoying this. I'm not having fun. It's difficult. I'm not enjoying the things that I get to do as an actor. I feel like I'm just the character guy who comes on and does a couple scenes and does sort of the same thing over and over. And I have this writing career that's kind of taking off, and I don't need to do this." And so I unofficially quit. I
Mhm.
didn't tell anybody really, but I just thought I'm not going to pursue performing anymore. And um, but since I didn't tell anybody, people around me kept calling me in for things. And so when certain things would come up, and I'd think, well, I can't say no to this. This seems like a great opportunity. I would just go in, and before I knew it, I was in this show called Peter and the Starcatcher, which was off Broadway, and then moved to Broadway. And suddenly, I found myself like performing on the Tony Awards, going, "What happened? I quit. I quit acting." But here I am. So I think I think taking the pressure off, or at least allowing myself uh, to enjoy performing again. That the experience of Peter and the Starkid was extraordinary too. I was around a group of actors who were incredibly creative, incredibly fun, funny, um, present, and just really helped reinvigorate my love of performing. So that's really what did it. I mean, being around actors and being reminded of how fun it is, how creative it is. I kind of thought, being a writer, I'm like, you create, you create. Being an actor, you just sort of interpret. You don't really create. But being around uh, this ensemble of actors, and being part of creating this show, Peter and the Starcatcher, just made me rethink that completely and realize, gosh, no, actors are not just interpreters. They bring a huge creative force that gets woven into the creation of a new piece, and so it was just absolutely thrilling, and just galvanized my my relationship to performing. once more. And I haven't looked back since then. I've really, found that enjoyment of it.
That was such a common thread on our show, especially like what the last question we ask is always in 10 words or less, what advice would you give to a young actor? And uh I think it was like 6 or 7 episodes in a row. It was like, take the pressure off of your auditions, have fun, don't forget to play. It's called a play for a reason, and all of that, because so many times we put pressure on every single audition. Like, this could be it. This could be the job that takes me to that place I want to be, or gets me to meet the people I need to meet to get to that place. And we just put all this pressure on it. It's like, or you could just have fun and enjoy your one day on whatever set you'll be working on that day, or the 2 months that you'll be doing this regional gig. But yeah, it's something we forget constantly. It's just always put that pressure on.
It's hard not to too, because
Yeah.
every opportunity you think, well, this could be it. This could lead to something. This could open doors. Um, and I've learned throughout my career that, like, you bring what you bring. If you're what they're looking for, then you are. If not, then you just have to keep moving. And I've been really fortunate enough to be in these rooms where people have looked at me and said, "There he is. That's exactly what we've been looking for." And when that happens, you're like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe it! It's finally somebody's looking at me and noticing me." But it doesn't happen all the time, at least for some of us.
And going back a bit to your writing, so you've done a ton of writing for children's theater, for television, between Altar Boys, Peg and Cat, which is where you picked up a couple of daytime Emmys, and Clifford and Blue's Clues and all these different things. So how did you get involved in television writing specifically? And then and you also we'll talk about Dogman because you have that coming up very shortly as well. So we'll get into that after. But yeah, television writing, all of that. How did you sort of cross over? Because a lot of people think that there's like this hurdle you have to get over to go from theater to TV, when in reality it's more of a blurry line. But yeah, how did all that happen for you?
Um, when I moved to the city, I was told, "Hey, you're a young character actor. Nobody needs you. Nobody wants a young character actor. They want an old character actor." So they're like, "You're going to have a great career in 20 years." And I was like, "Well, what do I do for 20 years?" And one of the answers was right. The other answer was children's theater. There was a children's theater company called TheaterWorksUSA, and they were like, "Hey, we need young character actors to play dogs, cows, aliens, whatever crazy thing we need. We need someone like you." So I would work for this company as an actor, and eventually as a writer and a director. And while I was working on a project, they hooked me up with this television writer, also a playwright, who we were writing an adaptation of the book Click Clack Moo. I don't know if you know Click Clack Moo, about the cows that type. And he was like, "You're really creative and fun. You should be writing for TV." And I was like, "Well, if you hear anything, let me know." And so he recommended me to write a Wonder Pets episode, and I did. And from then on, I started to learn, wow, if you show even the slightest kind of ability with children's television writing, your name starts to spread like wildfire. And suddenly people were contacting me saying, like, "Hey, would you be interested in writing an episode of this, an episode of this, an episode of this?" And I said, "Sure, why not?" And before I knew it, I had this little resume of writing, children's television episodes. And this writer who originally recommended me for Wonder Pets went on to create this show called Peg Plus Cat, about this little girl named Peg and her cat that basically live out math problems. And so I wrote for that for 2 seasons. And like you said, we won Emmys, and I was more surprised than anything else. I thought this was just a side thing that I was doing, while pursuing, a career in the theater, and it's kind of taken off. So, and since then, yeah, I've become head writer of various shows. And it's been a whole, you're right. It is very, similar in many respects to writing for the theater. And I found that being a performer and having a facility with the theater, with musicals, with uh, um, even with acting, has been a huge boon to me in being a television writer. You can pitch your ideas,
Mm.
wonderful. If they need a song, you know how that works out. You know how to set it up. Oh well, this is what happens in musicals. This is exactly what should happen in the show. So it has been kind of it's been interesting to see how my theatrical um, experience has helped me in writing for television.
And with Dogman, you have that coming up in March at New World. I just saw the play that goes wrong at New World Stages and saw the poster there for Dogman. I was like, oh my god, they're making. I remember seeing like a bunch of like press for it and had no idea that you wrote the show. So what can you tell us about that?
Dogman was a really fun experience. The when I was commissioned by this theater company that hired me way back when as an actor, TheaterWorksUSA, they commissioned me to write an adaptation of these Dogman books. And I had seen my son, who was in fifth grade, just devouring these books, and they're written by this guy named Dave Pilkey, who wrote the Captain Underpants
Yeah.
series of books. And I said, "Tell me everything you know about Dogman." He showed me all the books, and I was like, "This is hilarious! It's about this cop and his canine dog partner, and they get blown up, and a bomb blows them up, and to save them, they sew the dog's head on the cop's body, and he becomes dog." It's completely ludicrous, completely bonkers, and kids love it. They love these books. They're ravenous about these books, and I had no idea how big a title it was until I started working on it, and it's just been so much fun. Talking to Dave about adapting it. I had a whole pitch for him about like, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do. And he stopped me. He was like, just do whatever you want to do. And I'll just come and enjoy it. I'd just really love to see what you do. And so we were really given kind of carte blanche to do whatever we wanted with the show. And luckily he came and he was like, I love it. I love every second of it. And it was done off Broadway before the pandemic. How long ago was that? 3 years ago? 4 years ago? And it was really fun. Kids loved it, adults loved it, and watching parents and their kids sitting right next to each other, both laughing at the same jokes, was really like that's when you're like, yes,
Yeah.
it hits on all levels, and it was really great fun. So I'm thrilled that they decided to bring it back, and it's going to be running March and April at New World Stages.
I'm gonna gush about Some Like It Hot now, because it was one of the most joyous nights I've had at the theater in such a long time. Uh, Theater in the last couple of years has become very grounded, very real, and necessary storytelling, but a little, you don't necessarily leave the theater rejuvenated. And this was just such a wonderfully, just joyful experience. I mean, from the story to everyone's performances, the comedy and just dazzling from head to toe. So, firstly, congrats on such a delightful show. I think you guys all did such an incredible job.
I love it. I love everything you're saying. I feel exactly the same way. It's just a burst of life and joy, and
Mm,
everybody involved is having a great time.
yeah,
So we're thrilled that the audiences are feeling it as well.
yeah, and I mean, you can definitely tell that everyone's just having a blast, and you can always, especially, I feel like actors have like this special filter. They can just tell. It's like, oh, that's acting, or like, oh, they're having a blast up there. It's like one or the other. It's like, oh, they're acting like they're into it, and yeah. But it was just such a delightful show, and I already got to speak with your co-star Angie Shore last week, and
Legend, sure, yes, Broadway.
so I read that you got a random text from Mark Shaman years ago to participate in the demo, and I'm sure you thought you were being catfished at the time. You're like, how did Mark get my number? But how did your involvement evolve from there?
Yes, I was in Disney World and I got this weird text saying, "Hello, I'm Mark Shaman. I want you to record this demo." And I was like, "I know who you are. You're a legend as well." And I spent all of my vacation learning this song, and performed this demo, and he kept rewriting the song and bringing me back in to record it. And then they invited me to be in a reading of the show. And I did the reading, and it was really fun. It was very uh, it was very new, and they were figuring it all out, and they were trying to trying things out. But J. Harrison G was in that reading. We were both in the first. That was both of our first readings of the show, and then consequently, I was in little readings of it going forward. And it was supposed to go to Chicago for an out-of-town tryout, and then the pandy hit, and we all went into lockdown, and that was scrapped. And the first real acting thing I did coming out of those dark years was of a revamped script of Some Like It Hot. We were all in, like everybody else, we were in a giant room, separated, our chairs were like, separated, all the windows were open, everybody had masks on, and we all read and sang through, this script and score that they had time to work on during the pandemic. And that was really the beginning of the joy, the joyful feeling of it, because you really hearing Mark Shaman play and sing these songs, and reading the script, which had become funnier and funnier, and you just started to feel like, there it is, there's the bud, the flower bud, just you could feel yourself breathing again after all these dark, years and months. And it's just felt more and more joyous from there. Every step of the way. We did an in-town workshop, kind of an invited presentation in February of 22, and then we opened cold on Broadway right after that. So it was a nervous time for everyone. They were very nervous, but we always felt like we had something really, we loved it, and everything about it was just so happy and special. And so once we heard the audience response, we thought, oh, thank God, everybody's feeling the same thing that we are. So it's been very, very exciting. And like that text, the whole thing has been completely surprising to me. I don't know how he got my number, but I would like thank the person who gave him my number. They've given me one of the greatest experiences of my life. So.
And with Osgood's storyline, learning later in the show that he
spoiler,
is of like
spoiler alert, spoiler alert,
spoiler alert, yes, spoiler for anyone who hasn't seen it. That he has this Latino heritage, and he feels that he has this like double identity. I mean, for any Hispanic actor, you just feel that, because Lord knows so many of us get told that like we're not quite ethnic looking enough, or you're almost too ethnic to play something like ambiguous. And I feel like so many Latinos especially have like their foot in each of these two worlds, and it's so frustrating. But it was so great to see that represented in this way in a musical, especially because most of the Latino actors that I've interviewed, if not all of them, have done some version of West Side Story in the Heights, and just like the small handful of Hispanic centered shows, and that's kind of what they're limited to, sadly. But shows like this are definitely opening up the doors for that, and it's such a great thing to see.
Oh yeah, no, it's fantastic. I think that the show is really about identity. Every character in the show has this kind of inner identity that they believe that they are, and the world has this idea of who they are that's kind of putting it upon them. And the whole show is about how they square that, how they square who they feel they are with who the world is telling them that they are. And I feel like that's where we are in the world right now, and that's life. That's basically everybody's journey through life, figuring out how I can be myself in this world that's telling me that I'm something else. And Matthew Lopez, one of the book writers of the show, I know that he really was interested in that idea of giving Osgood this duality, just like other characters in the show are having this push pull. And I loved it. I was like, this is great. It veers away from the character in the movie, but it's right. It's right for the show, and it's right for the time that we're living in. And when I reveal that in the second act, you hear the audience just like respond. It's this amazing acknowledgement that like it's a surprise, but it's a joyful surprise. Like they are
Yeah.
very, very on board with like, oh, great, good, let's see this. And for me, I'm definitely in that kind of twilight zone of ethnicities that you're talking about. My my mother was British and my father is from Peru, so I'm like as far across the globe as you can imagine. And my whole life has been trying to square these two wildly different cultures that
Mhm.
have combined to create me. And being an actor, you're constantly looked at as like, who are you? Who are you? Why do you have this weird last name that I can't pronounce? Is it
Right.
Italian? What is it? And so I love that this character is really uh, kind of an embodiment of that. He's a surprise, but he's also like a real like um, uh, a symbol of this. There's a spectrum. It's not just black and white. There's a wide spectrum that we all need to really acknowledge and understand. So,
Yeah.
right.
And with the name of our show being Actors with Issues, what comes to mind as I mean, you did just sort of touch on that uh, tug of war with identity and whatnot, but is there another sort of career obstacle that comes to mind or something you've dealt with that you can shed a little light on for our audience of young artists?
Obstacle. Um, it's funny because there are a million obstacles. I mean, I feel like everything is an obstacle. Um, uh, uh, and I think it's just that kind of relentless kind of chipping away constantly. What I've learned is that longevity is your friend. Like the longer that you can kind of hang in there and keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing, the more that people can't ignore you. You hang around long enough, they have to go, okay, who are you? Go ahead. Let's see who you are. And um, but it is an obstacle. It's difficult. It's difficult to keep your head above water financially, living in New York City or any expensive city, and be an actor and mentally keeping yourself in the game, keeping the idea that you have something to offer, you have a talent, you have something that can contribute. It's all a mind game sometimes, and it's very difficult to keep that front and center. If one of the things when I was first on Broadway, the thing that really struck out to me was this is no different than it was in community theater. I'm on a stage in front of an audience. Like you'd think that it would be some completely different, thing. The lights are brighter, the marketing is bigger, but other than that, you are a person standing on a stage in front of people doing what you did when you were doing Stupid Wars in first grade. You were doing the same. And it's something to remember that like that is what it is. You what you bring to it is the same. And it's hard to remember that when you see everything seems bigger than
I forget who it was. I think it was a very early episode, but someone who, oh, it was actually this like high school friend of mine who's now like one of the standby genies in Aladdin. He said that when he made his like on stage principal debut as Genie, everyone was like, "How do you feel? You just made your Broadway debut." He's like, "I feel great. Am I going on tomorrow?"
yeah, right.
Like there
Am
was
I doing this
no
again? Right.
like big, you know, they were just like, "Yes, like I made it. Like, I did it. I did what I've always wanted to do." But people expect there to be this like magical transformation or eye-opening something, but it's just like at the end of the day, like you said, you're just on stage in front of a bigger crowd. The costumes are prettier, as you said, the lights are brighter, but it's just, you're just doing what you've always done, just in front of more people.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's thrilling. I'm not gonna lie, it's thrilling,
Yeah.
but it's the same discipline. It's the
Yeah.
same thing. So
I feel like any opening night is thrilling, whether it's if it's a show and if it's in a 50-seat black box theater, but a show you poured your heart and soul in, or a much grander show that you have a smaller role in. It's all thrilling. It's all that same sort of energy that you get from the audience, whether it's 50 people or 1200, you know.
Totally, totally, absolutely.
So before we go, we always play a quick game called Now That We Know You, since we've gotten to chat. But there's no timer, there's no rapid fire or anything. We used to time it, and we got rid of that because it stressed people out. But fill in the blank. If I weren't working in the arts, I'd be.
So hard. If I weren't working in the arts, I'd be um, uh, maybe a teacher, maybe like an English teacher,
Mm.
maybe. I don't know. I'd be sad, but I'd be an English.
You'd sneak a Shakespeare in there, you know, or a
Right,
play.
exactly. We're gonna read this aloud, everyone.
What's the best advice you've ever gotten?
I've got a lot of good advice that I instantly forget. But one that stuck with me is one that my fellow co-star Christian Borle once said. He said, "Other people's success is not your failure." I feel like that's something that people forget all the time. You know, they compare themselves to you know, someone whose star rises right away, or they book that job that, you know. It's hard to remember that you're on your own track. You have your own set of, you know, skills, talents, looks, everything about you as an individual, and your career is individual as well. And it's so hard to remember that when you're you know, feeling as though you're being left behind in some sort of way when other people seem to have it all together. But you know, the longer I've been in this business, the more I've realized it really is like, it's real. There's so many things out of your control that you can only like just stay in your lane and work as hard as you can to further yourself. It's not a race.
And what role have you had the most fun playing?
I you know, it's gonna sound like I'm lying, but this role is the most fun I've had. It's absolutely joyous. I feel like I've got the best track on Broadway. You know, I show up like, you know, 50 minutes into the show, and I get to like jump around and make faces and sing and crack jokes, and then, you know, I get to do things character actors don't get to do. I get to have tender moments and more emotional moments, and I feel like I have the best of all worlds in this part. So this is the one.
And similarly to before, what is the worst advice you've ever gotten?
The worst advice?
Yeah. I know we get way more bad advice than good.
Yeah. No, you do get a lot of bad advice. You know, I mean, I once got a, this is very, 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 this is probably not what you mean, but like I once was told, like, go into the audition and shake their hands right away and look them in the eyes and blah, blah, blah. So I would run up to the table and shake people's hands. And they, you know, I just learned, like, then when I was casting, I was like, oh, please don't come shake our hands. Please don't. Oh, please. And you just realize how desperate people come off, you know, when they come into a room, and they want to make a good impression. Everybody wants to make a good impression, but that kind of like overdoing the enthusiasm really comes off as not so great. And I just remember getting so much advice about, like, show them that you're fun and you're a team player and you're this, that, and the other. And it just smacked us so much desperation. I look back and I think, like, oh my God, like what kind of impression was I really making?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like everybody says, at the end of the day, the people behind the table want you to be good. They want you to be the guy they're looking for. And you know, you are or you aren't. And maybe they're making the wrong call, but, you know, it's their call to make. So you just have to kind of like throw it away when you leave the room and move on.
Yeah. And lastly, in 10 words or less, what advice would you give to a young actor?
I used to say, if you can do anything else and be happy, go do it. I would like encourage people not to put themselves through a career as an actor. And my thinking on that has changed. I have thought like, look, if you really feel like you have something to offer and you really feel like it's your calling and it's something that you need to do, go for it. Go for it. And throw yourself out there. And if a door opens, run through it, and just keep doing that. I look back and I do think like, was me unofficially quitting just my way of kind of avoiding, all of the heartache that the career, kind of inherently has. I don't know, but I did feel like I had something to offer, and that and I felt as though I wasn't being allowed to offer it. And I think if it's really burning inside of you, you've got to follow it. So I would say go for it.
Awesome. Kevin, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. If anyone wants to give you a follow on social media, Instagram, where can they find you?
I think I'm at Kevin of the Eagle on Insta. For those who like to translate my last name. And I think that Kevin Del Aguila on Twitter. You can find me there.
Awesome. And folks, you know the drill. You can follow us on Instagram at Actors with Issues. Give me a follow at Juan Ayala Official and subscribe to our show on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts for new episodes every week. Some Like It Hot is now in performances at the Schubert Theater on Broadway. I'm Juan Ayala. This is Actors with Issues, and we'll see you next week.